Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. On behalf of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, it gives me great pleasure in welcoming you to the Economic Dialogue, IMF and Beyond, organized by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. We've not had a very good period in the last 2 to 3 years. It was not just the pandemic, but it's also been an economic crisis, an unprecedented one at that. And now, while we are emerging from that quagmire, we would like to see Sri Lanka emerge to develop a clear roadmap for its economic recovery. The social and environment part will follow if the economic foundation is stable and solid. As a national body of accountants, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka recognizes the vital need for leadership and guidance in this critical moment. So today's forum is to facilitate a productive conversation among key stakeholders, including policymakers, business leaders, and economic experts, in an effort to promote a deeper understanding of the challenges facing Sri Lanka at this point, and in the short, medium term, and long term, and the potential solutions to overcome them. So to begin today, I would like to invite to make the welcome address the President of CA Sri Lanka, Mr. Sanjay Bandara.
Honorable Ranil Wickramasinghe, President of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, Honorable Ranjit Siambalapitiya, State Minister of Finance, Honorable M.U.M. Ali Sabri, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Kanchana Wijesekara, Minister of Power and Energy, Mr. Sagala Ratnayaka, Senior Advisor to the President on National Security, Honorable Iran Virkamaratna, Member of Parliament representing SJB, Honorable Harsha De Silva, Member of Parliament representing SJB, Honorable M.A. Sumanthiran, Member of Parliament representing ITAK, Mr. Mahinda Siriwadana, Secretary to the Treasury, Dr. R.H.S. Samaratunga, Senior Economic Advisor to the President, Mr. Deshaldi Mel, Economic Advisor to the Ministry of Finance, members of the panel representing professional organizations, members of the Council, distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to all of you. On behalf of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, I am delighted to extend a warm welcome to all of you to the Forum of Economic Dialogue, IMF and Beyond. At the outset, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to Honorable Ranil Wickramasinghe, President of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, for accepting our invitation to attend this important forum to deliver the keynote address. Thank you, sir. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to the representatives of the government, opposition, professional bodies, chambers, business leaders, and all participants who will ensure that this economic discourse is insightful and thought-provoking. CA Sri Lanka has made a significant and long-lasting contribution to the country for more than 64 years. As a professional body, we have always taken the lead to play a critical role in not only disseminating thought leadership, but also in organizing forums like this to discuss and debate on national issues and matters pertinent to the business community. This economic discourse, therefore, is part of our proactive efforts to engage the government, opposition, professional community, and chambers in a constructive dialogue on a single platform. Recently, we requested for a meeting with Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe to discuss pressing issues faced by the people, including the professional community, in relation to taxation, reforms, corruption, and matters pertaining to reducing expenditure. We received a positive response to our request from the Presidential Secretariat. Therefore, as an independent body, and having understood the importance of such a discourse, we decided to hold an open forum by bringing together all parties, including the state, opposition, professional bodies, and chambers, for a vibrant discussion. This is how today's economic forum came about. Our ultimate aim here is to facilitate an open discussion with all the stakeholders so that everyone has a better understanding of it. We hope that this constructive debate will help all of us to understand the roadmap for recovery and Sri Lanka's way forward. In conclusion, I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Dinesh Virakkodi, Chairman of the Board of Investment, Mr. Ruwan Wijewardena, Senior Advisor to the President, and Mr. Danushka Ramanayaka, Director of the President Media Unit, for their support in organizing this event. Thank you very much.
That sets the stage for today. Thank you very much, Mr. Bandara. May I now invite the State Minister of Finance, Honorable Ranjit Siyamalapitiya, for his address.
ආයුබෝවන් ගරු ජනාධිපතිතුමනි ගරු විදේශ අමාත්‍යතුමනි බලශක්ති අමාත්‍යතුමනි ජනාධිපති ජ්‍යෙෂ්ඨ උපදේශක සාගර රත්නායක මැතිතුමනි ගරු මන්ත්‍රීවරුනි මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශ ලේකම්තුමනි මහා බැංකුව අධිපතිතුමනි විශේෂයෙන්ම වරලත් ගණකාධිකාරී ආයතනයේ සභාපතිතුමනි සුවිශේෂී ආරාධිත අමුත්තනි IMF සහ ඉන්න ඔබට ඔබට යන්නට ප්‍රථම වචන කිහිපයක් අපි අපිට වෙච්ච දේ කතා කළ යුතුයි කියලා මම කල්පනා කරනවා. ඇයි අපිට මෙහෙම වුණේ? අපි ද්විත්ව හිගයක් සමග කාලයක් ගමන් කළා. මේ හිගය වෙනස් කිරීමට සමහර යුගවලදී යම් දේ කළා. සමහර යුගවලදී ගැන සැලකුවේ නැහැ. අපිට රාජ්‍ය ආදායම ගැන හිගයක් ආදායම් සහ වියදම අතර වෙනස දිගින් දිගටම ආවා. මම දකින්න විදිහට ප්‍රාථමික ගිණුම ඔබතුමාලා දන්නවා රජයේ ආදායම සහ පොලි නොවන රාජ්‍ය වියදම අතර වෙනස කාලයක් දිග නැත්නම් වර්ධනාත්මක වෙනසක් මේ දෙක අතර ඇති කරනු ලැබුවා. ගෙවුම් ශේෂය පැත්තෙන් බැලුවත් ඒ වගේ. කාලයක් තිස්සේ අපිට ලැබුණු දේ සහ අපි විසින් වියදම් කළ දේ අතර ලොකු වෙනසක් දිගින් දිගටම වර්ධනය වුණා. ජංගම ගිණුම ඔබතුමාලා දන්නවා අපිට විදේශයෙන් ලැබෙන දේ සහ ගෙවන දේ අතර වෙනස ප්‍රාථමික ආදායම් ගිණුම අපේ පොලි ගෙවීම මෙවත් එක්ක අපි ණය අරගෙන මේක පියව ගත්තා. අපි මේ ණය අරගෙන සුවිශාල යටිතල පහසුකම් සංවර්ධනයකුත් කළා. ඒකේ වරදක් කියන්න බෑ. හැබැයි එයින් අපිට ඉපයීම ඩොලර් ඉපයීම විදේශ විනිමය ඉපයීම අපිට අවශ්‍ය වෙලාවට තිබුණේ නැහැ. කලක් ගතවන දීර්ඝ ඉපයීම් වෙනුවෙනුයි අපේ වියදම් කෙරුණේ. අපි නැවතත් ණය ගත්තා. නැවතත් ණය අරගෙන මේ පියවීම කරනු ලැබුවා. අපේ ණය තොගය සුවිශාල ගණනකට ආවා. දැන් අපි 128ක් දළදේශීය නිෂ්පාද්‍යයත් එක්ක. අපිට නොසිතූ විරූ ප්‍රශ්න කීපයකට එක් යුගයකදී මුහුණ දෙන්න සිද්ධ වුණා. පාස්කු ප්‍රාහාරය ආවා. අපේ ඩොලර් උපයන විදේශ විනිමය උපයන ප්‍රධානම කර්මාන්තයට දැවැන්ත ප්‍රාහාරයක්. සංචාරකයන් පැමිණීම 2018 23 ලක්ෂයයි අවුරුදු දෙකක් යනකොට ලක්ෂ 2යි. ලොකු ප්‍රශ්නයක්. කොවිඩ් ආවා. අපිට දින 100 ගණනක් රට සම්පූර්ණයෙන් වහන්න සිද්ධ වුණා. ලෝක ආර්ථික ප්‍රශ්නත් ආවා. ඒ වගේම අපි බලාපොරොත්තු ඵලයන් නොලැබෙන ආර්ථිකමය තීන්දුව කීපෙකුත් අපි ගනු ලැබුවා. ඵලයන් නෙවෙයි අපිට ඍණ ඵලයන් නැත්තම් අවපසට තමයි අපේ වර්ධනය සිද්ධ වුණේ. අපේ බදු සහනය අපි ළඟ තිබුණු 17 ලක්ෂයක් වූ බදු ලිපිගුණ සංඛ්‍යාව ලක්ෂ 5කින් පහතට ආවා. අපි අද මේ බොහෝ විට කතා බහ කරන උපයන විට ගෙවීම තමයි විශේෂයෙන්ම එතෙන්දී අපිට අවම තත්වයකට ආවේ. ඒ වගේම අපේ පොහොර ප්‍රතිපත්තිය අපේ රටේ ප්‍රධානතම නිෂ්පාදනය සමග සුවිශාල ගැටුමක් ඇති වුණා. මෙන්න මේ කාරණාත් සමග අපි 2022කට යනකොට රාජ්‍ය ආදායම දළ දේශීය නිෂ්පාද්‍ය සාපේක්ෂව 8.2ක් ලෝකයේ අඩුම තැනකට අපිව ගොනු වුණා. ඊටමත් ප්‍රශ්නකාරී තත්වයක්. දැන් මම කිව්වා අපි හැම විටකම අපේ ණය තොගය කළමනාකරණය කරගත්තේ තවත් ණයක් අරගෙන කියලා. බොහෝ යුගවලදී. සමහර යුගවල ඒකට එහා ගිය අභියෝගාත්මක කාරණාවලට ගියා. දැන් මේ වෙනකොට අපේ තත්වය ලෝකේ ණය ශ්‍රේණිගත කිරීම ආයතන විසින් අපේ ණය හිමියන්ට ප්‍රකාශ කළා වරින් වර. දැන් ශ්‍රී ලංකාව සමග ගනුදෙනු කිරීම ගැන දෙසරයක් හිතන්න. මෙන්න අපිට ප්‍රශ්නයක් ආවා. අපි ළඟ රුපියලුත් නැහැ. රාජ්‍ය ආදායම දළදේශීය නිෂ්පාද්‍ය සාපේක්ෂව 8.2යි. අපි 120ක් වියදම් කරනවා. 12%ක වෙනසක් අපි හොයන්න ඕනේ. මේක හොයන්න නම් අපිට දැන් ණයට දෙන්න කෙනෙකුත් නැහැ. අපිට දැන් දේශීය වශයෙන්ුත් මුදල් නැහැ. විදේශීය වශයෙන්ුත් මුදල් නැහැ. අපි අපේ රටේ ලොකු භාණ්ඩ හිගයක් ඇති වුණා. ඔබතුමාලට මතක ඇති. අත්‍යවශ්‍ය දේ දිගු පෝලිං කිලෝමීටර් 5ක් 6ක් පෝලිං ලොකු ජන උද්ඝෝෂණයක් අපේ සංජිත ඍණාගයකට ආවා. මහා බැංකුවට කියන්න සිද්ධ වුණා අපි తాවකාලිකව ද්විපාර්ශ්වික ණය හිමියන්ට ගෙවන්නේ නැහැ කියලා. 2022 අප්‍රේල් මාසේ 12 වෙනිදා ඊට අපිට තව එක පඩියයි වැටෙන්න තිබුණේ ණය නොගෙවා ඉන්න. නමුත් ඒ දැනුම් දීම මහා බැංකුව කරා වගකීමෙන්. ඉන් පස්සේ මොකද්ද අපිට යන්න තිබුණු එකම තැන අපි හැමදෙනෙක්ම පිළිගත්තා. පක්ෂ විපක්ෂ දේශපාලන වශයෙන් බැලුවත් අපිට යන්න තිබුණේ IMF එක. ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍ය ආයතනය. අපි ගියා. හැබැයි අපිට ලොකු අභියෝගයක් තිබුණා. අපි 16 වතාවක් ඔවුන් සමග කටයුතු කළා. ඒ 16 වතාවෙම අපි අවශ්‍ය වෙලාවට අපි එතනට ගියා. කලින් අපිට අභියෝගයක් එන බව දැකලා අපි ගියා. හැබැයි මේ වතාව අපිට යන්න උනේ බුන්වත් රටක් හැටියට. අපිට ලොකු ප්‍රශ්නයක් තිබුණා. ඔවුන් මූලික එකඟතාවය දුන්නා 2022 අගෝස්තු වෙනකොට. හැබැයි අපිට අපේ ද්විපාර්ශ්වික ණය හිමියන් සමග සාකච්ඡා කරලා ඔවුන්ගේ එකඟතාවය මේ ණය ප්‍රතිහෝගතකරණය කරන්න කැමැති කියන එක. ඒක ලොකු අභියෝගයක්. ජනාධිපතිතුමා ඒකට ඉතාම සුවිශේෂ නායකත්වයක් දුන්නා. දැන් අපි අන්න එතනට අවිලා තමයි පසුගියදා අද අපි ඔබ්බට කියලා කතා කරන්නේ IMF එකෙන් ඔබ්බට. අපේ රටේ සාමාන්‍ය ජනතාව ප්‍රතිඥා පත්තු කළා ප්‍රීති වෙන තැනකට ආවා. ඔවුන් දැක්ක අපිට යන්න තිබුණ එකම තැන ඒ ජයග්‍රහණයක් හැටියට වුන් දැක්කා. දැන් අපි ඒකත් එක්ක සුවිශේෂී අභියෝග රාශියක් එක තමයි ඉස්සරහට යන්නේ. මොකද අපි මම කිව්වා 16 වතාවක් ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍ය අරමුණු සම කටයුතු කරා. ඒ 16 වතාවෙම වැඩි වතාවන් ගණනක් අපි ඇති කරගත් එකඟතා ආරක්ෂා කරන්න අපිට බැරි වුණා. අපිට ජනප්‍රිය කරුණුත් එක්ක ගොනු වෙන්න සිද්ධ වුණා. අපේ විවිධ මැතිවරණයන් වෙනුවෙන් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. අපි වගකීම නොගැනීම වෙන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි දැන් අපිට ඊට වඩා වෙනස් අභියෝගයක් තියෙනවා. අපි ඉන්න තැනත් අපි දන්නවා. ජාත්‍යන්තර මුල් ආයතනයත් අපි මෙතෙක් ගත්ත ක්‍රියාමාර්ගات එක්ක වැඩි සොයා බැලීමක් කළ යුතු කියලා. මේකේ වරදක් නැහැ. අපිට තියෙන අපි ඉටු කළ යුතු කාරණා හැටියට අපි සමගාමීව මේ තැනට එනකොට ක්‍රියාත්මක කරුණු කීපයක් තිබුණා. උද්දමනය පාලනය කළ යුතුයි කියලා. ඔබතුමාලා දන්නවා. අපේ ආහාර උද්දමනය 90% ඉක්මවා ගියා. පොඩි සාමාන්‍ය අඩු ආදායම් ලාභී ජනතාව ඉතාම අසිරු තැනකට ආවා. 70%ක උද්දමනයක් සාමාන්‍ය උද්දමනය ගියා. ඉතින් අපිට මේක පාලනය කරන්න අවශ්‍ය වුණා. එක්ක අපි බඩු සුලභ කරන්න ඕනේ රට ඇතුලේ. නැත්නම් අපි වැඩිපුර ආනයනය කරන්න ඕනේ. මේ දෙකම අපිට බෑ. එහෙනම් අපිට තියුච්ච කෙටිම මාර්ගය ගත්තා. කෙටිම ඍජුම බැංකු පොලිය ඉහළ දැමීම. ඒක අසීරුයි. ගණකාධිකාරී වරුන් හැටියට ඔබතුමාලා දන්නවා. ඔබතුමාලා වියදම් සැලැස්මක හිටියා. ඒ වියදම් සැලැස්මේ ණය සඳහා වූ පොලිය එක්වරම දෙගුණකින් වැඩි වුණා. අසීරුයි. ඔබතුමාලාටත් අසීරුයි. සාමාන්‍ය ණය හිමියෙකුටත් අසීරුයි. හැබැයි මොකද්ද මහ බැංකුවට ගන්න තිබිච්ච වෙනත් පියවර? අපි දැක්කා මේ පියවරත් එක්ක උද්දමනය අද සෑහෙන පාලනයකට ලක් වුණා. මේ අසීරු පියවරත් එක්ක. අපි ඒක තවදුරටත් ත්‍යා යුතු වෙනවා යම් කාලයක්. රාජ්‍ය ආදායම වැඩි කරගත්තා. 8.2 අපිට ඉන්න බෑ. වැඩි කරගැනීමේදී ප්‍රශ්න දෙකක් අපිට තිබුණා. එකක් අපි වක්‍රබදු වලින් තවදුරටත් යනවාද අපි ටිකක් වැඩි කරගත්තා. හැබැයි අපිට වගකීම ඍජු බදු වැඩි කර ගැනීම. උපේනීට බදු වලට ගියා. අපි අහිමි කරගත්තේ අපි නැවත හඳුන්වා දුන්නා. යම් ප්‍රතිශතයක් වැඩි කරා. අසීරුයි. හැබැයි වෙන මොකක්ද විකල්පය? මේ බදු ගැන කතා කරද්දී විශේෂයෙන්ම මෙතන ඉන්නේ වරලත් ගණකාධිකාරීවරු අති විශාල ප්‍රමාණයක්. මේ රටේ බුද්ධිමත් උගත් ඒ වගේම බොහෝ ආයතනවල මූල්‍ය උපදේශකවරු. බොහෝ ආයතන මෙහෙවන්නන්. එනිසා මම මතක් කරන්න කැමතියි මේ සියලු දේ මැද්දේ අපෙන් ගිලිහි යන ආදායමකුත් විශාල වශයෙන් තියෙනවා. විවිධ හේතු. සමහර විට උපක්‍රමශීලීව අපෙන් ගිලිහා ගන්නවා. එහෙම නැත්නම් විවිධ හේතු නිසා ගිලිහෙනවා. ඔබතුමාලාට ලොකු වගකීමක් දැන් පැවරලා තියෙනවා. අපි මේ ජාතික ව්‍යායාමයක යෙදෙන්නේ. ඒ ව්‍යායාම සාර්ථක කර ගැනීමට. ඒ වගේම අපිට සිද්ධ වුණා රාජ්‍ය ආයතනවල වාණිජමය වශයෙන් කරන රාජ්‍ය ආයතනවල ලාභ නොලබන තැනකට මේව අරන් එන්න. අපිට සිද්ධ වුණා විශේෂයෙන්ම විදුලි බල මණ්ඩලය කන්ටෙල් සංස්ථා මේව මිල ගණන් වෙනස් කරන්න. විදුලි බල මණ්ඩලය මිල වෙනස් කරන්න ගියාම ප්‍රශ්නයක්. ඇයි? අපි විදුලි බල මණ්ඩලයේ මෙතෙක් දිගට ආවේ සමාජයේ මේ සුබ සාධන ආයතනයක් වාගේ. මම කාලයක් අමාත්‍යවරයා හැටියට හිටියා. ඒ වෙනකොට සාමාන්‍ය නිෂ්පාදන වියදම ඒකකයකට රුපියල් 16ක්. හැබැයි අපි වැඩි ප්‍රමාණයක් අලෙවි කරේ රුපියල් 4කට. ලොකු ප්‍රශ්නයක් එතන තියෙනවා. හැබැයි වැඩි කරන්න ගියාම ඇමතුමා මුණ දෙන ප්‍රශ්නේ තමයි අර විශාල මට්ටමේ පරිභෝජකයාගෙන් ඒ වෙනකොටත් නිෂ්පාදන වියදම අභිභාගයේ මිලක් අරන් තිබුණා. අර සුළු පරිභෝජකයාට තමයි මේක කරන්න වෙන්නේ. ජනප්‍රිය නෑ. හැබැයි ඒ තීන්දුව එතුමාට ගන්න සිද්ධ වුණා. මම කියන්නේ මේවා ක්‍රියාත්මක කිරීමේ ඇතිවන සමාජමය අභියෝග. මේවා කෙනෙක්ට හරි පහසුවෙන් අහන්න පුළුවන්. ඇයි ඉහළ තැනට වැඩි නොකර මෙතනින් වැඩි කරේ? කාරණාව අරකයි. ශක්තිමත් සමාජ දැලක් අපි හැමදාම කියනවා අපි නිදහස ලැබපු දා ඉඳන් සමාජ ආරක්ෂණය කරලත් අපිට තාමත් ඒකේ කෙලවර දකින්න බෑ. හැබැයි මේ සැරේ අපිට ලොකු වගකීමක් තියෙනවා. හරියාකාර අවශ්‍ය කෙනාට සමාජ ආරක්ෂණය ලබා දෙන්න. ලක්ෂ 37ක් පවුල් ඉල්ලලා තියෙනවා. අපිට සමාජ ආරක්ෂාව දෙන්න කියලා. දැන් අපිට වගකීමක් තියෙනවා මේ IMF එකඟතාවෙනුත් එක්ක. ඒ නැතත් මේක අපේ වගකීමක්. මේ මිනිසුන්ගෙන් හරියාකාර කවුද තෝරගන්නේ? දැන් තෝරගන්න ගියාම ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා. මේ වගකීම ගන්න මොකද පනතේ හැටියට තොරතුරු දෙන්නත් මේ වගකීම ගන්න අවශ්‍යයි. තොරතුරු රැස් කර නිලධාරියත් ගන්න අවශ්‍යයි. නිලධාරිතුමා කියනවා මට ඒ වගකීම ගන්න බෑ කියලා. අපි මුණ දෙන අභියෝග. දැන් වෙනත් කණ්ඩායමක් දාලා අපිට තොරතුරු සකස් කරගන්න සිද්ධ වෙලා තියෙනවා. හැබැයි මේ අපි යන යහපත් ගමනේ යහපත් ඔබතුමාලා කවුරුත් පිළිගන්නවා ඇති. රජයේ ආධාරයක් දෙන්නව නැත්නම් අවශ්‍ය කෙනාට. හැබැයි ඒක තෝරාගන්න ගියාම ප්‍රශ්නයක්. හැබැයි ඒ ප්‍රශ්නෙට මුහුණ දීලා අපි ඒක ක්‍රියාත්මක කරගෙන යනවා. දැන් ඉදිරියට අපි කාරණා රාශියක්. මහා බැංකුව ස්වාධීන කිරීම. ඔබතුමාලා කවුරුත් පිළිගන්නවා ඇති. අපි කළ යුතුයි. දැන් පනත පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට ගෙනත් තියෙනවා. මහා බැංකුව වඩාත් ස්වාධීන කිරීම. අපේ මුදල් ලේකම්තුමා ඉම්පස්සේකට වාඩි වෙන්නේ නැහැ. මුදල් මණ්ඩලයට අපිට අවශ්‍ය විදිහට මුදල් මුද්‍රණය කරන්න බෑ. මහා බැංකුව වඩාත් වැඩියෙන් පාර්ලිමේන්තුවත් එක්ක කතා බහ කළ යුතුයි. මේ ඔක්කොම හොඳ දේවල්. ශක්තිමත් දූෂණ මර්දන පනතක්. මෙන්න මේවත් එක්ක තමයි අපි ඉස්සරහට යන්න උත්සාහ කරන්නේ. අපි රටේ ජනතාවත් එක්ක කටයුතු කිරීමේදී බලපාන ප්‍රධානම දෙයක් රාජ්‍ය ආයතන ප්‍රතිහුගත කිරීම. කොටස් දෙකකට බෙදෙනවා. එකක් තමයි අලාභ ලබන ආයතන. ඒක නම් දැන් බොහෝ අය හිත හදාගෙන ඉන්නවා. අපි දිගින් දිගටම රුපියල් බිලියන් 400ක් විතර වාර්ෂික වියදම් කරලා ආයතන ගණනාවක් රැකගෙන ආවා. ඔබතුමාලා කවුරුත් එකතු කරලා දෙන බදු මුදලින් තමයි මේවා රැකුනේ. රුපියල් බිලියන් 300ක් 400ක්. අධ්‍යාපනයට වියදම් කරනවා රුපියල් බිලියන් 600ක් 700ක්. ඒකෙන් භාගයට වැඩි අපි වියදම් කරනවා රාජ්‍ය ආයතන රැකගන්න. අවශ්‍ය අධ්‍යක්ෂ මණ්ඩල දේශපාලන විසින්පත් කරලා ඒ දුර්වලකම් සියල්ල බදු ගෙවන්නන් විසින් ගෙවන්න ඕනේ. මේක දැන් සමාජයට මේක පිළිගැනීමක් තියෙනවා. ඒක කළ යුතුයි. හැබැයි තවත් තැනක් තියෙනවා. රජය දැන් ප්‍රතිපත්තියක් වශයෙන් අපි ව්‍යාපාර වලින් ඉවත් වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒක තමයි දැන් ඊළඟ ප්‍රතිපත්තිය. ඇත්ත. රජය කරන දේ නියාමනය කරමින් හොඳ බදු මුදලක් අරගෙන මේ සේවකයෝ ටිකත් ආරක්ෂා කරන වැඩපිළිවෙලක් විනිවිදභාවයෙන් යුතුව මේවා. හැබැයි අපේ සමාජයේ මේවා දිහා බලන ක්‍රමය ඔබතුමාලා සමාජ නායකයෝ නිසා මම මේ විශේෂයෙන් කියන්නේ ගණකාධිකාරිවරුන් කියන්නේ මූල්‍ය කළමනාකරුවන් කියන්නේ ආයතනයක් නෙවෙයි. සුවිශාල සමාජ වටපිටාවකට උපදෙස් දෙන අය. ඉතින් මේ අපේ ඇඟෙන් එන සමහර දේවල් තියෙනවා. දැන් මම කතා ඉවර කරන්න යන්නේ සාමාන්‍ය ජනතාව එක්ක මම නිතරම කතා බහ කරනවා. මට එක සහෝදරයෙක් පසුගියදා කියනවා එමතුමා අර මේ හොඳට තියෙන ඉස්පිරිතාලෙත් එකුණන්න නේද යන්නේ ලංකාරෝහල ගැන. මම අහුවා දැන් ඔබතුමා ඒක රජය කියලා දන්නවද? අද තමයි දන්නේ. එදා තමයි එතුමා දැනගෙන තියෙන්නේ. දැන් ඒකෙන් ඔබතුමාට විශේෂ ප්‍රයෝජනයක් ගත්තද? නැහැ මම ගිහිල්ලාම නැහැ. හැබැයි ඒක දෙන්න එපා. මම අහුවා දැන් ඔබ මේක හරියාකාරව කරලා මේ සේවකයොත් ආරක්ෂා කරලා ලැබෙන සේවයත් වැඩි කරලා අපි ඒකෙන් ලැබෙන ආදායම මේකෙන් ලැබෙන බදු මුදල ඔබතුමාලාගේ ජීවන තත්ත්වය නගා සිටන්න යෙදුවොත් එදිනදා වියදම අඩු කරගන්න ඒක හොඳයිලු. හැබැයි අපි ජානවල අපිට තියෙන මෙහෙම දෙයක්. අපේ ජනාධිපතිතුමා මේවා අපි කියනකොට සමහර විට එතුමාට hina යනවා. එතුමා අවුරුදු 20කට ඉස්සෙල්ලා මේවා කිව්වා අපිට. අපි එතන මේවට ඉතාලි තදින් විරුද්ධ වෙනවා. මේ අපේ ගැළපෙනම සටන් පාර්ටිය බවට අපි පත් කරගත්තා. 2001 ඉඳලා 2004 වෙනි කාලේ 2004 කෙටි කාලයකින් අපි බලය ලබා ගන්න පාවිච්චි කරපු ප්‍රධානම සටන් පාර්ටිය. එතකොට hina වෙනවා ඇති. අපිට කියන්න සිද්ධ වෙලා තියෙනවා. කාලයකට පස්සේ බොහොම කාලයක් ගිහිල්ලා ප්‍රමාද වැඩි මං හිතන්නේ. අපිට සිද්ධ වෙලා තියෙනවා මේවා ගැන නැවත කතා කරන්න. ඒ නිසා අපි ඒ වගකීමත් අරගෙන ඉදිරියට යා යුතුයි. ඉතින් මම නැවතත් කියන්නේ ඔබතුමාලා විශේෂයෙන්ම ගණකාධිකාරිවරුන් කියන්නේ විශේෂයෙන් වරලත් ගණකාධිකාරිවරු අති දක්ෂ මූල්‍ය කළමනාකරුවන් පිරිසක්. අපි විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයන් කාලවල වරලත් ගණකාධිකරණ විභාගයෙන් චාටඩ් ගොඩ දාගත්තා කියලා කියන්නේ කාලේ ඉතාමත් විශිෂ්ට දක්ෂයෝ හැටියට අපි දකිනවා. අපිට බැරි වුණ දේවල්. අද දක්ෂයින්ට ලොකු වගකීමක් පැවරලා තියෙනවා. ජනාධිපතිතුමා මේක විස්තරාත්මකව කියාවි. අසීරු ගමනක් අපිට මේ රට හැබෑවට නගා සිටවන්න අපිට අවශ්‍ය නම් අසීරු ගමනක් අපි ධෛර්යයෙන් යුතුව යා යුතු වෙනවා. ඒකට අපි සියලු දෙනාගේ හැබෑ අවංක කැපවීම විපක්ෂ සහෝදරවරුත් මෙතන ඉන්නවා. ඒ බොහෝ දෙනෙක් මේක දිහා හොඳ ඇහින් බලනවා කියලා මම දකිනවා. ඒ නිසා අපි කැපවීම කළ යුතුයි. ඔබතුමාලා තමයි අපිට විශේෂයෙන්ම ආදායම හොයලා දෙන්නේ. ඒ ප්‍රධාන ආයතනවල. ප්‍රධාන ආයතන කිහිපයක් තමයි අපේ රටේ මේ මුළු බදු ආදායමෙන් 50%කට වැඩිය ලැබෙන්නේ ඔබතුමාලා කළමනාකරණය කරන ආයතනවලින්. නිසා මේ සියල්ල පිළිබඳ යහපත් ඇසකින් ධනාත්මක ඇසකින් මේ අවශ්‍ය ධෛර්යය අපි සියලු දෙනා ලබාගත් එක්ක ඉටු කළ යුතු සංග්‍රාමයක අපි ඉන්නේ. අන්නේ සඳහා විශේෂයෙන්ම අද මම හිතන්නේ මේ වෘත්තීමය කණ්ඩායමක් සමග කරන පළවෙනි සම්මන්ත්‍රණය මේ IMF එකඟතාවයෙන් පස්සේ මම හිතනවා ඉතාම අත්‍යවශ්‍ය වැදගත්ම වෘත්තීමය කණ්ඩායමක තමයි අපි සාකච්ඡාව කරන්නේ. ඒ සභාපතිතුමාට මම ස්තුතිවන්ත වෙනවා. ඒ වගේම ප්‍රාර්ථනා කරනවා මේ සාකච්ඡාව ඉතාම සඵල සාකච්ඡාවක් වේවා. මේ අපි යන්න සූදානම්. ගරු ජනාධිපතිතුමා දැඩි අභියෝගයක් බාර අරගෙන යන ගමන සාර්ථක කරගන්න ඔබතුමාලා සියලු දෙනාටත් හොඳ කොටස්කරුවන් වෙන්න. මොකද අද මෙතන වාඩි වෙන තව මොහොතකින් මේ කණ්ඩායම ඔබතුමාට අවශ්‍ය බොහෝ ප්‍රශ්න අපිට වඩා හොඳින් උගත් කණ්ඩායමක් විසඳා දෙවි. ඒ විසඳුමුත් අරගෙන ආයතනයට සමාජයට හොඳ පණිවිඩයක් ගෙනියන්න ඒක ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න ඔබතුමාලා සියලු දෙනාට ශක්තිය ධෛර්යය ලැබේවා. බොහොම ස්තුතියි.
Thank you, Minister Siambalapitiya. In synopsis, just to mention for those of you who did not understand, who do not understand Sinhalese, just giving you a synopsis in English. And in fact, there are transcribers, if you like. If you just put your hand up, we can get that for you too. It's in all 3 languages on the different channels. Just raise your arm if you need a transcriber. So just over there. In synopsis, it was the policy of borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, basically bad fiscal management, bad fiscal policies that put us in the eye of the storm. The challenges seemed insurmountable, but there was a plan, and the plan involved ensuring that Sri Lanka raised herself up from the mire. Wheels were set in motion, and currently inflation is reducing. These were the priorities that were put in place. Restructuring debt, restructuring SOEs, ensuring that cost of living is reduced and that exports are improved in numbers, in volume, as well as in quality and quantitatively. And right now, those plans are in place and we keep moving forward. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. It's now my pleasure to invite to address each of you collectively to make the keynote address, the Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe, President of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka.
Honorable the Ministers, Members of Parliament, President of the Chartered Institute, distinguished guests, and friends. Minister Ranjit Siambalapitiya gave a good description of the economic problems we face today. Therefore, I will not cover that ground again. Today, we are having the first discussion after the announcement of the IMF program. It's being held in a hotel which is a symbol of our first commercial economy, the plantation economy. The British are the ones who carried the transformation from a feudal economy to a commercial economy. The first ventures in coffee collapsed, and then came the big transformation of tea, rubber, coconut, and the development of the other industries, services, and of the Colombo port. And this is a symbol where people would come here and discuss issues, firstly the Britishers, later on the Sri Lankans. So that generation in 50 years created a new economy. Now, after independence, the task has come on us, that came on us to continue that work. We have done so well that today our poverty line, people living below poverty, has increased from 12.5 to 25% of the population. There are people who skip one meal. There are 500,000 who have lost their jobs. Many small and medium enterprises on the verge of collapse. What happened? Who's responsible? But answer, not I, sir, but Red Cap will not do. All of us are responsible for the situation we are in today. We must remember that. All of us here, whether we are the politicians, whether we are the business community, whether we are the professionals, whether we are the trade unions, whether we are the civil society, and more than others, whether we are the media or we are the government administrators, we cannot run away from that responsibility. We must all bear that. If we still continue pointing fingers at each other, we will not succeed. But what matters to us is not merely the IMF program, but also what comes beyond that. What we have to do now is ensure that the next generation will live in a prosperous society. That's all that the government is seeking to do. The start is difficult, as the minister explained, but nevertheless we have to go along. We cannot by any means move away from it. What is our task? It's not merely to stabilize the economy, but to ensure growth, to grow in this new global economy, and to go ahead. These are facts that we can't get away from. If we are to do this, we must remember that one of the biggest issues that held back our growth is the ethnic issue. We have to think as Sri Lankans. We cannot divorce that issue from the economic issues. There are two E's, as I can see it. And we have to address both those issues. I am not dealing with that issue now. This is not the time or the place. But nevertheless, we have to decide, we have to acknowledge it. Secondly, how do we carry on our discussions at this crucial moment? We are a democracy. Open debate is useful, and it's good that we have members representing government and opposition, the business community, the professions, but we have to discuss and debate these issues. And discussion must take place in the halls of discussion from Parliament downwards, not in the streets. That type of agitation is no longer suitable for a country and goes on development. But the decision is ours to take, not for the government to enforce. We can only ensure law and order. But otherwise, where do we hold our discussions? That's the second issue. So it's from here that we have to go forward. I will not deal with the details of the IMF package. As you all are all aware, it has many, in addition to what the Honorable State Minister said, there are also other important objectives. It will bring about a significant revenue-based fiscal adjustment based on progressive tax reforms to raise Sri Lanka's revenue to GDP ratio. It's a progressive one so that we gradually reduce the tax burden on the poor who has to bear the brunt of the VAT system. Better public expenditure and debt management through essential institutional reforms. And enhance social safety net to cushion the poor. Restoring price stability and a market-determined flexible exchange rate, and rebuilding our international reserves. Then ensuring financial stability through a healthy banking system. Now, these are some of the key objectives of this IMF reforms, in addition to what the Minister has mentioned. Therefore, what we are seeking is to stabilize the economy by 2026. Come back virtually the same ratios we had in 2019. So we have 7 years to come back to 2019. Is that enough? That is the issue. Anyway, approval of this program will allow Sri Lanka to commence negotiations with private and official creditors on restructuring its debts in line with the parameters set by the IMF Debt Sustainable Assessment, and also the commitments that I have made with my letter of March 14th. We hope to conclude the discussions and arrive at a comprehensive restructuring agreement with the creditors by the time the first review under the EFF in 6 months takes place. In order to keep its part of bargain with the creditors and fully benefit from the debt restructuring, Sri Lanka will need to implement the commitment under its 4 years economic program. So we still have to start the debt restructuring, especially the discussions with our private creditors. From here, do we stop at this stage, do the debt restructuring and the 4-year program? That is not enough. If you want to give a future to your children, if you want to give a future to the youth, then we have to go forward. Because Sri Lanka is today at the crossroads between seizing the opportunity for growth to fix our long-standing institutions and structural problems to become a prosperous society, or denying our problems, rejecting change, and stagnating as a lower middle income country. Implementing this program is how we seize the opportunity for a more prosperous future. We have to deliver this. The dissatisfaction with all our systems, with the government, with the opposition, with the conventional groups, resulted in last year March of young people marching on to Goldface Green, the start of the Aragalia. Unfortunately, it was taken over by violent extremists. Then what have the young people done? Now they are voting with their feet and leaving the country. So this is what we have to think. Not to study the IMF program and decide we are looking at one, we'll support item 1, we won't support item 2. Are we going to stabilize the industry, create growth, and become a prosperous society. So this is why what is most important in the IMF additions to stabilization is the growth enhancing structural reforms. If we don't do these structural reforms, you can write it out, and next time it's going to be a far more violent uprising. And we must boldly go ahead with these structural reforms, which will unlock our growth potential, put on a high growth trajectory. That's the only way out. So we have to reduce the role of the government in the economy to increase efficient resource allocation, competition and productivity. We must not look at government to bail everything out. We cannot look at government as the ultimate provider of solutions to issues that cannot be resolved by the market. Then further trade liberalization, including rationalizing remaining para-tariffs. The world global economy is going to be more competitive. We have to adjust to it. The labor market reforms which will enable more females to join the labor force. As our population age, it is necessary that more females join the labor force. Remove the impediments to private investment, including by modernizing the regulatory and doing business environment. Reduce electricity costs by improving the generation and the mix and distribution of power generation, leading to an efficient electrical distribution network. Addressing climate change. We have to go through this. There's no way out. If anyone has another system, let them get up and say so. And what I am aiming in the next 2 years to lay the groundwork for a highly competitive social market economy. We have to be competitive. So we'd like to upgrade our FTA with India to economic and technical cooperation agreement and join the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. I don't think we should hesitate. If Laos can join and Cambodia can join, why can't, and Myanmar can join, why can't we join? That's the issue. That means we are going to compete. High level of competition means an efficient government structure. And why do I say it's a social market economy? Because we need more money. We can talk our education system covering 90% of the students having 10,000 schools. But what is the quality of education? We need money to make it one of the best education systems in South Asia, or the best education system in South Asia in the next decade. That is social progress. Secondly, the health system. We spend a lot of money on health, but do we get the benefit of every rupee we spend? We need to put more money into it. Into the social safety network, to the poor, to the vulnerable, we have to help them. So that's where we have to get bulk of our money into. Not to supporting the Petroleum Corporation or the CEB or Sri Lankan. We wasted too much of our resources on those occasions. So let us look at how we go ahead. Our potential for green economy at the moment is good. Not only renewable energy, but green hydrogen, green ammonia, and many other outputs resulting from this green energy, especially the biomass, which we have not thought of, wave energy. We should get into it immediately, like we got into the apparels as soon as 1978 reform started. A digital economy. Start the digitalization. Start with Western province where 50% of your economy is. Spread out to the other areas of high economic activity, then cover the rest of the country. We have to look at tourism, one which will get us average of $500 a night, 2,000. We can start off with that's a low-hanging fruit. Another low-hanging fruit to agriculture. Our productivity is small. Let us modernize agriculture and fisheries. That's the start of another low-hanging fruit. As far as manufacturing and services are concerned, let's not get there step by step. Let's do one leapfrog into Industry 4, into automation and AI, artificial intelligence. We are suited for both. Then our government money must go to establish the infrastructure for such industries and services. These but some that I can think of. You all can think of more. Sri Lanka becoming a regional logistics center, the offshore potential for the offshore economy. All these are matters to be discussed. So we must take this chance. We can't wait. Because we've been missing on all opportunities for restructuring. When we became independent, Mr. D.S. Nayak said, let's cultivate let us aim to be self-sufficient in rice. When we save that foreign exchange, we'll be much better off. He also got Sir John Kothara to start the hydroelectricity systems. Then the first round of reforms after that was not introduced by the UNP. The most significant one was Mr. Philip Gunawardana's Paddy Land Act. It was not a communist measure. The Americans had carried out massive land reform pertaining to paddy land in Japan, in South Korea and Taiwan. He just adapted that. And it led to the growth of production in those countries. So he brought that in together with the Agrarian Services Department, and the government had established the People's Bank. It was shut down not by the opposition. It was shut down from within the government, and you have this watered down act which is there today. So we missed the first chance of building up on what Mr. D.S. Nayak had done. The second chance came again in 65 with Mr. Dudley Sennaker's government, the Shenoy report, the starting of industries, the Industrial Development Board, education reforms, increasing productivity, tourism. Some of these were implemented, but the Shenoy report was not implemented. And as a result, we lost the next opportunity. If we had gone ahead with those reforms, it was similar to what Chung Hee Park brought in South Korea and Lee Kuan Yew brought into Singapore. Third round came in 78. President Jayawardena opened up, the economy went ahead, but we had to slow down because of the ethnic situation and the conflict that broke out in the country. Nevertheless, in 1989, the second stage was done by President Premadasa when we pushed ahead, firstly to divest ourselves of some of those corporations which are doing quite well, like Kalani Tyres, and as well as the push for investments both in the apparel sector as well as the tourist sector and a lot of other new industries which we started. But then that came to an end after 1994 as the next government focused completely on resolving the ethnic issue at the expense of the economic development. It went on. So we missed that opportunity. Those who were behind us got ahead of us. Then came, as the minister reminded me, I had forgotten, regaining Sri Lanka. We missed that. So how many more opportunities are we going? We haven't got. This is the last chance. Are we going to take it or not? That's all that you have to decide here. The details you can work out. We have a 6-month review, another 6-month review. But what is in the IMF program, we have to go ahead. But on what we have to, on the growth program, yes, we can discuss that further. And once I bring for, once the debate on the IMF program is over and the resolution is put to vote, thereafter we put out a sketch or a white paper on how the growth should take place. And I'd like the National Council of Parliament to be engaged with the government and for all of us to engage the rest of the sectors of society in determining what our future is going to be. So all I request of you is to make up your mind that we are going to grow. And this is the last chance, and let's press the accelerator to the floor. There's nothing else that we can do. And I ask all of you to join the government in this task we have undertaken. Thank you very much, and thank you for the Chartered Association for sponsoring this event.
Thank you very much, Honorable President, for your keynote address. And we move into the panel discussion now and a Q&A thereafter. For the Q&A, may I request those who do want to send any questions up to any members of the panel at all. A QR code will be up on the screen. Please read the QR code, and once you are in the site, you can write in your questions and send it up. Our moderator will then address it to the relevant member of the panel. Our moderator for the panel discussion is Attorney at Law, a Director of multiple listed and unlisted companies, and a renowned marketeer, Mohammed Adamali. I'd like to call him on stage first so that he can welcome our panel. From the panel representing the government, the Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe, President of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka. Could we have Mr. President up on stage? The Honorable Ranjit Siambalapitiya, State Minister of Finance. The Honorable M.U.M. Ali Sabri, Minister of Foreign Affairs. The Honorable Kanchana Wijayasekara, Minister of Power and Energy. Honorable Dilum Amanugama, State Minister of Investment Promotion. Mr. Mahinda Sirivardhana, Secretary to the Treasury and the Ministry of Finance, Economic Stabilization and National Policies. Mr. Sagala Ratnayaka, Senior Advisor to the President on National Security and Chief of Staff. Dr. R.H.S. Samaratunga, Senior Economic Advisor to the President. Mr. Deshal Dimel, Economic Advisor to the Ministry of Finance. For the panel representing the opposition, may I request them to please sit on the left-hand side of the stage. When you face the stage, it will be on the left-hand side, please. The Honorable Eran Wickramaratne, Member of Parliament representing the SJB. Honorable Harsha De Silva, MP representing the SJB. The Honorable M.A. Sumandiran, Member of Parliament representing the Lanka Tamil Arasakatchu. And we did invite the Honorable Kabir Hashim and also a representative from the Janata Vimukti Peramuna, but due to unforeseen circumstances, they cannot make it to today's event. For those members representing the professional bodies and chambers, please sit on the right side as you face the stage. Representing the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce of Sri Lanka, Mr. Vish Govindasamy, Chairman. Chairman of the Joint Apparel Association Forum, Sri Lanka, Mr. Sharad Amaleen. Representing the Bar Association of Sri Lanka, Mr. Harsha Fernando. Representing the Sri Lanka Association for Software Services Companies, Chairman, Mr. Ali Ashik. Representing the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, Sri Lanka, President, Mr. Ken Vijayakumar. The Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing President, Mr. Nuan Gamage, who represents SLIM. Representing the Women's Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Sri Lanka, Ms. Anuji De Silva, who is the chairperson. And that, ladies and gentlemen, forms our panel for today. And I now hand it over to Mohammed Adamali, who is our moderator.
Thank you, Savitri. May I say at the outset that the size of this panel is representative of the numbers we have in Parliament.
Adam, just one little interjection, please. We'd like to also invite the President of CA Sri Lanka, Mr. Sanjay Bandara. And Mr. Faisal Summers. Mr. Faisal Samat, as well on stage.
All right. At the outset, let me very quickly set out the purpose and scope of today's session. I'll lay it out precisely in order to maximize the 90 minutes that we have for this segment. The purpose is not to make political statements or canvass political ideologies, and I say this not just to the politicians here, but specifically to the audience. The purpose is, in fact, to try and identify clarifications, answers, and generate intelligent responses for the serious concerns and doubts that we have in respect of how we as a nation are to move forward. We are hoping that this forum will provide some clarity and some detail rather than general surface level responses. Pardon me, panelists and audience, I reserve the right to intervene in the event any question or comment derails the objects and scope of this discussion, or if the question or comment is unreasonable in terms of time or goes outside the scope of the point under discussion. To start off, Your Excellency, honorable members of the panel and distinguished panelists, welcome to this panel, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. President, you set out and identified the scenario in your address. In fact, people have little confidence that we will rise from this abyss. And we believe also that in terms of communication, the state has not done enough to give us this confidence. There is talk of a 25-year plan, which most of us know little about. The youth of this country are fleeing the land, and the brain drain in the last year has been worse than in the worst years of the war. SME businesses are shutting down. General business sentiment is rock bottom. People are scarcely able to survive in the triple whammy of rising taxes, rising costs, and unemployment. Congratulations, sir, on securing the IMF Executive Board approval for the $3 billion loan. We understand from your Harvard interview that you plan to leverage this to raise more aid from our international development partners. In the context of the staggering foreign and domestic debt that we face today, is this reason for celebration? How much more are we planning to borrow? What will our external and domestic debt be in a year and 2 years' time? And is the IMF loan really digging us a deeper hole for ourselves with a false sense of utopia? I wonder, sir, if you might take the first question or hand it to someone in your team to handle.
So we have been through, the full 1 year to reach the final stage on the 20th of this month, the executive board approval of the IMF agreement. We started, the middle of last year, middle of March. After 6 months, with the intense debate, discussions, and dialogue with the IMF, we reached, the SLA, staff level agreement, on the 1st of September. Then, with nearly 7 months, just less than 1 week, less than 7 months, we were able to come to the finality of the EFF with the IMF. In between, we were asked to comply with, implement, the certain prior action, 9 prior action of very serious, with the very serious reform content. And we have all done, the during this nearly 6-7 months. Now that in the discussion leading up to the 20th of March, the major difficult hurdle was to talk to our external creditors. First, somewhat easy task was to talk to Paris Club members. They came forward to help us in giving their financial assurance. In fact, the first letter came from India, the non-Paris Club member. Then thereafter from China. Chinese letter was, didn't meet, the first letter didn't meet, the expectations of IMF. Subsequently, on the 6th of March, China has written another clarification letter with the additional information and clarifications. And this is how we went through during the last whole year to come to the 20th Executive Board of the IMF. Now that, in the discussion leading up to the discussion, here and there in locally and also the international media raised the question of domestic debt restructuring issues. And in the discussion, that took place nearly a year, we never had, to answer or look at, the domestic debt restructuring. But, probably the international partners, international creditors, bilaterals, and also the private creditors might ask, but it's too premature for us to say anything about the dimension of this one, whether it will come or otherwise. It's too premature for the Sri Lanka government to say at this stage.
So just to gather from your response in terms of actual debt, where it will stand in terms of foreign debt and domestic debt in the next year and two, are you able to give us anything specific on that, Dr. Samathu?
There is another series of action expected from the part of government. Once we agree on this IMF, EFF, there is a series of action. We had the follow through and the completed with those are time bound actions. Primarily looking at the fiscal consolidation that set the ground for the recovery and the unlocking the growth. That's alone is not sufficient, but that is the basics. Debt restructuring is the one which is which has two parts. If you want to say that the external debt restructuring discussion will begin probably in a month or so. Yeah, probably in a month or so after April or so. As you will probably know that the experience of other countries like Suriname or Zambia, it's a very difficult, complex process. We all have to agree on the common agree on the common agree on to a common program. Because the common program is the important and also a difficult program. We have the Paris Club bilateral creditors. There are non-Paris Club bilateral creditors like the bigger creditors like India and China. We all have to agree on the common program, which is the international experience suggests that it's a time-consuming thing. But we have to go through and agree on that this is one of the areas which we have to we have agreed with the IMF. This is a time-bound action in a certain time period. We have to complete this debt negotiation to show to the IMF that our debt is sustainable on the sustainable path. But we have not not yet discussed this matter when it comes to domestic debt restructuring with anybody. So anybody, because it's since nobody has raised it so far officially, it is in our view it's a premature thing. Thank you.
Would anyone else in the government representation panel like to comment on it before I move the question forward?
Yeah, just to make a few comments on the process. So after the approval of the program, we would be basically starting the discussions with the creditors. So as the first step, we are going to do a presentation today to the creditors. Myself and the governor would be basically leading that. And then by end of April, we have to come up with a proposal, rather process, and will have to be announced to the market. So by then, I hope that there'll be much more clarity on the issues that you raised right now. Just to add that, yes.
I think what ST is saying is what we have received so far are assurances from the bilateral creditors that they're willing to go into a restructuring program. But what it is going to be has not still been worked out, and that is what he is going to start today. And he has a timeline for it. In addition to that, the IMF will also undertake a debt sustainability analysis, which will tell us what kind of, it will take into account our projected revenues and the government expenditure, and based on that, we have to also work backwards to say what we can really afford to pay, also taking account what other finances will come in the form of World Bank DPO program or the ADB programs that will come in. ADB has been, is for the first time, I think, following a different approach. Their program is going to be budget support, which it has never done before, which is also going to be a huge plus for the next few years for us. So when you say budget support, the money comes into the Secretary to the Treasury, and it will be his responsibility to manage it.
Thank you. If we are to give confidence, especially to the younger generation, that they will have a future in this country, then an assessment of the level of debt that we are going to get into in the next few years is going to be, I believe, a critical factor. Dr. Harsha De Silva, do you have any observations on this, and would you like to make any comment with regard to that aspect of the question?
Thank you. I mean, it's confidence that is being built with this whole program. I mean, we can't certainly continue to borrow and borrow and borrow more. We have to bring in investments, and this is a short-term solution that we have. So therefore, if after the restructure, I don't know, various people are saying various things about what the domestic restructure should look like. Some even have said yesterday that maybe we don't need one, depending on what the Chinese may offer. If they offer a 10-year moratorium and a certain reduction in the rates, the coupons, perhaps we can just do some cosmetic changes and sort of squeeze our way through. So there may be multiple ways in which ST and all have devised, Nandalal, some scenarios. But it's really, we need to get back into we need to get the confidence back. That's what is essential. So this is an exercise to rebuild that confidence. So let's hope that we can all find a common ground somewhere so we can move forward.
Yes,
thank you. Could I just, I think to the specific question that you asked in terms of the debt reduction. So at present we are at around 126% of GDP as at the end of last year. It's not going to be a reduction overnight. It's a kind of gradual process. So according to the IMF program, by 2032, in 10 years' time, we need to be down to about 95% of GDP as your debt stock. So that's the kind of pathway, and it's a gradual process. I think there is a debate in the country as to whether it makes sense to be taking on additional liabilities, additional loans, and how that's going to look. Now, I think as Dr. De Silva mentioned as well.
In fact, that is the fear.
That is the fear.
The concern of the great majority is, are we going to borrow further, and how much more are we going to borrow?
Exactly, which is why I said that it's not going to be a reduction overnight. It's a gradual process. The value of an IMF program is a lot more than the $2.9 billion of actual cash that is provided. The value is the confidence that it unlocks. And it is through that confidence being unlocked that Sri Lanka is able to regain access to global markets, not just in terms of capital markets, but even for basic trade finance. Today, the cost of having opening an LC is significantly higher because of this lack of confidence. So this is a key step in terms of enabling that confidence to return. That will help us get greater investments in both in terms of fixed investments, in terms of portfolio investments, and that is what really gets required to recover the economic activity. So I would look at it at that kind of broader lens, and the debt restructuring, the fiscal effort that has been taking place in parallel, that is what will bring down debt over this gradual path over the next 10 years. So that going from 126% to 95% target over 10 years is really where that path is set at.
Thank you.
I don't know, Deshal, whether you want to also go in to the framework changes that the government will be making along with the IMF program that would increase to the confidence of investors coming in.
I could touch on that if the
Yes,
moderator is okay. Absolutely. So I think that confidence is built in. So the IMF program is just 4 years. We know that. But what is important is that we built in a framework of legislations of institutions that are able to instill that confidence over the longer term. So just to take 2 examples for that. One would be the public finance management legislation that is being contemplated. That builds in certain types of fiscal rules that sets out targets in terms of what levels of deficit you can be at over a certain period of time. It builds in obligations on the Treasury to have greater transparency in terms of fiscal management, greater tools in terms of fiscal governance. All of that is very important in terms of building that greater confidence in the fiscal system that we have. Now, we all know that Sri Lanka doesn't have a good track record of implementation of legislation. We've had similar legislation since 2003, the FMRA. So it's important that legislation is combined with institutional independence. So for instance, that is where the central bank's independence, the bill that comes in adds value as well. But I think the third pillar there is public understanding and public confidence. So it's important that the public is also able to understand this reform process, why it is there, and also then to hold government to account over a period of time, so that then actually you're able to allow those legislations to work, allow those institutions to work, and with that public understanding and public support, I think those 3 together are really what we need to take the economy forward.
Thank you. Mr. Sharad Amalin, being the head of JAF, the export body for the apparel sector, what is the reaction of your buyers overseas to us getting this IMF facility, and how do they see Sri Lanka going forward? What is the level of confidence that they have? Has there been any change since the last couple of weeks?
No change. They are still dappling with a demand that is lower than what it was in 2019. But the confidence of the apparel industry has been the fact that we have continued right through COVID and through the economic crisis in the country to deliver, to work. And this was facilitated by the government, making us, giving us the status of essential services during COVID. I think the president will remember when he took over as Prime Minister, he sat with us, and the statement that he made was that we might have more dollars in our safes at home than what the Treasury has. We have come a long way, sir, from that particular time. I think it's important to take this opportunity to say a little bit more about the export industry. But the president did mention some of the points that I would have wanted to echo in this forum. And the fact is that Sri Lanka has to be, and so you made this statement, it is a export-led economy. That's what you told us, and that's what you said will be the way forward. You have continued to keep that statement going, and even with the IMF discussions, we know that that's the basis of which all the discussions are taking place, an export-led industry. And the word competitiveness is important. And I must say this, because you can have an export-led economy, but if you're not competitive, and if you're not relevant, you're history. The ease of doing export business is important. And we are seeing changes taking place in the retail environment. We all know today the apparel industry is having its challenges of a 20 to 25% drop in demand. This is worldwide, so there is nothing that anyone can do, nothing to do with the economy or whatever. But the fact remains that we do have SMEs and other industries, small-scale industries, in turbulent, or rather challenges in keeping itself going. There is disruption in the retail trade. And so you did mention that we need to be aware of what this disruption is. I'm going to take a minute to digress a bit and mention, last week we had lunch with a biggest Chinese exporter from Vietnam and China, and he said, have you heard of this tech company that is selling online only women's apparel called Shein? And we said, no, I'm not sure about it. And he said, it's a tech company that uses data, it uses AI, it uses digital design and technology, all digital tools, and more importantly, it started 6 years ago. First year's turnover, 600 million. 5 years later, $20 billion. This is out of China. It only has 32 floors of all techies. It's like talking to Tesla or Google. All techies, they know jack shit about garments or apparel. But they're a $20 billion business in 5 years. So when we heard this, what did we think? Our apparel industry is history. That's one way of looking at it. The other way is to look at it positively and say, how do we align ourselves? How do we change ourselves? How do we disrupt ourselves the way we are working to be able to be relevant to that tech company? Because that's the future. That company and our neighbors around in the area that we are, that is India for that matter, is taking a cue from that, and you have a lot of startups that are going down that path. I'm going down this story because I want to endorse what you just said earlier, that we got to see the opportunities around us. And our neighbors have invited Sri Lanka to be part of their development. I just want to tell one more thing that this tech company does, and that is logistics. President, you spoke about it, sir. Logistics and shipping. I just believe we need to even open up shipping, and logistics much better than what we are doing now if we want to be relevant. Last part of it is make the ease of doing business, export business easier. There are certain gazettes that have been repealed. Please don't do that. Make it easier for exports. Make Sri Lanka, I agree with the President, we have signed the agreement with the IMF. Let's look forward. Let's make sure that this window that we have, we take the opportunity and look beyond and for export growth and not just Sri Lanka.
Thank you, sir.
I have answered 5 questions in one go, okay?
I was tempted to interrupt you at one point, but it was too interesting to do so.